Alright, hello everyone. This video is basically just going to be me giving commentary over my current uh, personal best time that I got for Majora's Mask 3D any percent with the new Moon Warp route. I got this PB offline, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I never got around to putting it up until now because I wanted to put commentary over it. So I'm finally getting around to doing that. Yay for being productive. Um, but yeah, so I did runs of this offline, just due to the nature of the run. It's very grindy because most of this run is actually pretty easy. Like, the first half an hour is, something that probably anybody can just about pick up as far as speedruns go. But then the final, 7 minutes of the run here are pretty difficult with the new Moon Warp and final boss fights that we have to go through. Because for those of you who don't know, Majora's Mask 3D recently had about 50 minutes cut off of its any percent time, as far as the any percent world record goes. This PB that I have here is a 36:17, I believe, or 36:16, I think, was what I retimed it to. But before the new Moon Warp technique that we have now, which allows us to skip all the dungeons, the any percent world record was a 124:17 by Iwabi, who is by far the best player of this game right now. And currently the world record is now a 33:23, I want to say. It's 33 minutes something seconds by Iwabi. So quite faster than it was before. And again, that is thanks to the new Moon Warp technique that I've now mentioned for a third time so far. But yeah, so beforehand, back when the run was about an hour and a half, we had to go through all of the game's 4 main dungeons to collect the 4 remains, which would then allow us to get the Oath to Order, and we could play the Oath to Order with the 4 remains to access the moon and defeat the final boss. But now none of that is necessary anymore. And it's actually, it took quite a community effort to be able to figure out how to do this, because the technique that's used to perform the Moon Warp is a technique known as stale reference manipulation. And stale reference manipulation has been known about for about a year and a half now in both the original Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I believe it became used for a Moon Warp in the original Majora's Mask sometime back in early 2020, or maybe even late 2019, I think. I honestly don't remember, though I probably should get my facts, like, precise on that at some point. But in any case, even though we knew that SRM was technically possible in MM3D also, there were a lot of factors that led to it being a lot harder to research and figure out how to properly apply stale reference manipulation in Majora's Mask 3D to achieve Moon Warp. Because the Moon Warp that we do in this run is pretty similar to the Deku Palace Guard Moon Warp that the original game did for a while. Before they got this, I think they got like a new Grotto SRM warping thing that they now use in like the Defeat Majora category. Of course, they just use arbitrary code execution in any percent, but that's not going to be something that this game has due to how 3DS system write permissions work. So anyway, as far as this run goes, a majority of this run now consists of what we call first cycle, which is going through the beginning here with Skull Kid stealing Epona and transforming us into Deku Link, and us having to go through the first cycle of like the game to get the ocarina back so that we can turn back into human Link. Now, interestingly, there is actually a way that you can not skip the first cycle in this game, but it's actually slower and significantly more difficult than just going through the first cycle regularly. So it is actually possible to beat this entire game in a single cycle, but due to the complexity and time that it takes to set that up, it's not faster to do that for the any percent speedrun, at least right now. That may not necessarily be the case for the future, but only time will tell if that is the case. So, I guess some logistical things. This game is being played on the Japanese 1.0 version. There's the original Majora's Mask 3D was the 1.0 version, and then there was an update that was released for the game, which is version 1.1. I don't think the versions actually make a difference in this run anymore. Version 1.1 fixed like a few things that were wrong with the game, and also patched the ESS bottle duping trick, but there's no more ESS duping in this run, at least with the current state of any percent, so yeah, I don't think the version actually matters anymore. The language also doesn't really matter at all. Japanese is just the language that I already have set up to run on my 3DS, so it's the one that I used. Because as we can see here with Tattle, pretty much all the text in this run is just completely instant, so language basically makes no difference. You can play in whatever language you want, and you will still be very fast as far as your text goes. So right here, we're going to burrow into this Deku flower, and we're going to fly on over here to this ledge. When I get to this ledge, I'm actually going to skip a text trigger by holding R as I spin through it. For some reason, you can just, like, prevent certain text triggers from activating if you're shielding while you're inside them. So using that, we can skip that text trigger to save, like, 1 second, and then side hop over the gap to skip having to fly over it, which would be a few seconds slower also. And then now we come in here to the clock tower. Unlike the N64 version, there is no Happy Mask Salesman skip in this version, simply because we don't have a way of pausing the game right now. It actually is possible to skip cutscenes in this game by pausing frame perfectly, but we can only do that if we have the Bomber's Notebook to pause with, and we do not have the Bomber's Notebook yet, but the game does kind of force us to get it later, so it's a bit inconvenient that we can't have it to skip this cutscene. But the cutscene's not too bad, it's just a little bit of text from the Happy Mask Salesman before he sends us on our way into Clocktown. One of the things in this game that's actually kind of annoying about First Cycle is just how slow Deku Link moves compared to the original game. I'm not really sure why they slowed down Deku Link's acceleration so much, but Deku Link does feel quite a bit heavier in this run, at least compared to like how he feels on the N64. So that's a little bit annoying, but it's generally fine. So that's why you'll always see me walking a little bit before I start spinning, because I need to accelerate to full speed before I do those spins. So with the first cycle of Clocktown, we actually have ways to speed it up quite a bit. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and hear some stories from Granny in the Stockpot Inn. She has 2 stories that she can tell us. One will advance time forward by about 4 hours, and the other one will advance time forward until 8 a.m. of the next day. So that pretty much skips the first 2 days just by talking to Granny right here. We hear the story of the 4 giants, and then suddenly it's 8 a.m. of day 2. And then we talk to her again, hear the story again, mash through the text, and it's 8 a.m. of day 3. Just like that, it's dawn of the final day already. Unfortunately, we can't keep using Granny to make time move forward until like midnight of the 3rd day. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to travel to the other side of Clocktown, where we have the dancing scarecrow that we can use to move time forward until 6 p.m. of the current day. So that'll be how we get close to midnight of the final day as fast as possible, since that's when the clock tower opens up, and that's when we can finally go back and get the ocarina. That's what we'll be doing here. Before this new moonwarp route that we had, we would actually escape Clocktown on the night of the third day, and we would go and get the Song of Soaring, while time was ticking up to midnight here on the third day. It's not actually faster to do that anymore, though, so we kind of just replaced that with a lot of waiting for when we finally finish everything we need to do before midnight of the third day here. There are a few things we need to do, though. So first we need to go get magic, which is done by collecting the one stray fairy here in Clocktown. On night of the third day, the stray fairy is in East Clocktown, and so that's where we go over and get it. We're also going to get a silver rupee in the stock pot inn. Although the things that we buy with the silver rupee are not going to actually be used on this cycle. Kind of a weird reason that we're buying things, but it will make sense once we see it. Silver rupee is just up the stairs here. So since at this point I'm going to be waiting for the in-game clock to tick up a bunch, it doesn't really matter how fast I do things as long as I do them fast enough, if that makes sense. So, like, I think in this run I specifically managed to get to the clock tower at, like, 9 p.m. at night or something, because, like, again, most of the time here is going to be waiting, so, like, our specific movement through these next few areas doesn't really matter. As long as time is ticking up, of course. We want to optimize, like, you know, what loading zones we go through so that we don't go through more loading zones than are necessary, for instance. Which is why we go from East Clocktown directly to North Clocktown. And then we can pass by Tingle as he's dancing around. There's another text trigger in here that we can skip by shielding while we're... or by holding R to shield in between our spin attacks as Deku Link. And then the Great Fairy is completed, and we can finally get our magic. And magic in this run is solely used to just shoot the bubble down. Or not to shoot the bubble down, but to shoot the bubble at Skull Kid to knock the ocarina down out of his hands. Pretty sure if we didn't need to do that, we wouldn't have to get magic at all, because we definitely don't use magic for anything else in the run. Or at least the strategies that I use for the rest of the run don't involve magic. So like I said earlier, most of this run is pretty easy, right? Like, we're just kind of going through first cycle here. But once first cycle ends, things begin to dramatically increase in difficulty until the end of the run. Because we have to go and do the Moonwarp trick itself, which is a very precise trick, and then we also have to fight the final boss Majora with a very limited inventory. Alright, so as we go through North Clocktown here, I want to avoid triggering the Save Statue Owl, because I just don't need the Save Statue Owl, so watching the cutscene of it being triggered is not something that we need to waste time doing. I'm going to take my rupees over here to the bomb shop, and I'm actually going to buy both a bomb bag and bomb shoes. Now, we're not going to be using the bomb bag or bomb shoes during this cycle, but I'm buying specifically the bag and the shoes right now to get rid of these, like, you know, you got shoes and you got bombs animations. Because with those out of the way, there's an exploit that I can use to get extra explosives during the second cycle of the run. Once we finally turn back to being human. And then to skip the Moon's Tear, we just need to do a gainer right there. And now we are waiting. This is very exciting gameplay right here, as I'm sure you can all imagine. Having Deku Link stretch out and stare at this green targeting arrow. Yeah, so once we finally wait out the clock here, which, interestingly enough, time in the first cycle of the game actually moves faster than time in all the rest of the cycles of the game. I forget what the ratio is. I want to say it's like, each minute is like 2/3. Each minute in first cycle, each in-game minute is like 2/3 of a regular minute. for the rest of the cycles or something like that. So you're not waiting as long as you would if it was like, you know, the other cycles, but still an unfortunate amount of waiting for a speed run. I'll drink some water here because my throat's kind of dry. Alright, only 20 in-game minutes left. Do some more stretching as Deku Link. And we did it! And our reward for waiting is... more cutscenes. What a delight this run is. But this is mainly the reason that I, like, did most of my attempts for this game offline, because grinding through, you know, this first part of the run over and over again is, like, this kind of run is something that I do better being able to grind offline instead of, like, trying to stream attempts of it, since the only, like, really exciting stuff doesn't happen until first cycle is finally over. Okay. So once this cutscene is over, we're going to shoot down the ocarina from Skull Kid, and then we'll be able to learn the Song of Time, get our memories back of Princess Zelda, and we will then be able to play the Song of Time, go back to the dawn of the first day, finally become Human Link, and then be on our way to perform the Moon Warp. Deku Link is very battle ready right here. Of course, optimally, we want to stand right where the ocarina is going to drop so we can pick it up instantly. I had to move forward a bit, though. Though I did still save 3 frames over my previous PB, so... my first cycle was apparently slightly more optimal. I should also note that the first cycle that I'm doing here is actually not, or at least the first cycle I do in this run is not the optimal first cycle for the run. The optimal way to go about this run is actually to store your money in the bank on first cycle, like the silver rupee that we got. And then you withdraw that money and go buy a bomb bag and 10 bomb shoes from the bomb shop. But the reason I'm doing this route is because this route was a lot safer for the strategies that I use, because what I can do now, after having bought the bomb bag and 10 bomb shoes in first cycle, is I can get a silver rupee again at the start of second cycle, and then I can buy 10 bombs and 20 bomb shoes. And so the key difference there being the 20 bomb shoes, because we can obviously just get more bomb drops in grass, but shoes we have to buy, and bomb shoes are expensive when your wallet is limited to a capacity of 99. And this is mainly due to the strategies that I employ during the Majora fight. The way that I do the Majora fight heavily relies on having a lot of disposable bomb shoes to use, so that I can be able to get through the whole fight. Because we're pretty much going to be doing the whole fight with a bunch of explosives and a Deku Stick. And also help from some special guests that will magically appear during the fight for us, which we'll get to later. We got more cutscenes, and then we're going to eventually go back in and talk to the Happy Mask salesman. Interestingly, on the dawn of a new day, or like dawn of the first, dawn of the second, dawn of the third day, like title cards that come up, for some reason mashing the A and B buttons will make those title cards just disappear faster. There's a lot of like little things in this game where like mashing the B button specifically will just make something happen faster, or like skip a cutscene or make it shorter or something, which is a little weird. But I guess that's just part of the things that Grezzo decided to change. Alright, so now we're finally talking to the Happy Mask Salesman again. He's going to teach us the Song of Healing, which is not very useful for anything. It's just part of this cutscene that we have to watch if we want to become human again. Speaking of becoming human, I guess I can mention that the way the first cycle skip works, that I mentioned earlier, or being able to beat the entire game in one cycle works, is by getting the Keaton mask on, I believe it's dawn of the third day, inside the building in the laundry pool that I'm forgetting the name of right now. I'm actually not very good with names, or like with the names of some places in Majora's Mask, but basically there's a very complicated way, which also uses stale reference manipulation, that we have of clipping into that building early. And by clipping into that building early, we can get the Keaton mask. And if we use the Keaton mask as Deku Link, that will actually transform us back into human Link. Despite the fact that we do not have the Deku mask at that point. And that's what allows us to then go perform the Moonwarp technique in the first cycle so that we can beat the game in a single cycle. And never have to, get the ocarina, get magic, learn the Song of Time or the Song of Healing or any of that. But again, the problem with that is it does require an unfortunate amount of waiting. Once you clip into the building, you're actually waiting just for an extremely long time before you can actually get to the dawn of the third day to get the Keaton mask. Another place where mashing B saves time is during this cutscene. If you mash B to make all the text appear instantly, it'll then go away quicker when it finally goes away. Alright, so now the Happy Mask Salesman gives us the Bomber's Notebook. I guess because Grezzo didn't want players to, miss picking up the Bomber's Notebook. I'm not sure what other reason there would be to force it on the player here, but here it is, so. And it thinks that we caught all the bombers, which makes sense because that's what you're normally supposed to do if you want to get the Moon's Tear on first cycle. Alright, first cycle is now over, though. So we can begin doing interesting things, like bonking on a door right there. Alright, so first order of business is we need to go and get the silver rupee that is in East Clocktown. And then we will be using that to buy 10 bombs and 20 bomb shoes. Buying 10 bombs and 20 bomb shoes actually costs more than 99 rupees. But there's a bit of an exploit we can do where if we buy consecutive bomb shoes quick enough, the game actually won't have updated our rupee count in time to know that we don't have enough rupees to purchase the last set of bomb shoes. So we use that exploit to our advantage here to buy, I believe it's 110 rupees worth of explosives. So we'll see this when we get into the bomb shop. And then once we have our explosives, we will immediately head out to the swamp so that we can perform the Moonwarp in the Deku Palace. So here we go, 10 bombs, and then if I mash buying shoes fast enough, I can successfully buy 2 sets of bomb shoes. And I can equip my bombs and bomb shoes and my Deku mask. And then I can exit out of West Clocktown here. So technically the fastest form of movement to the southern swamp is doing what's called a fess right here, which stands for Forward Extended Super Slide. But I just kind of elect to go with a backwalk because fessing in this game is kind of hard to control. ESS position is pretty precise, so not something that I usually go for. Especially since, like, this run isn't, you know, meant to be, like, as optimal as it can be anyway. Like, I'm just trying to get or at least when I was doing attempts for this, I was trying to get a decent enough run with this route. Just to basically get, like, a PB, pretty much. That wasn't, like, extremely bad for my standards. Although I did mess up this trick that I'm doing right now. I'm attempting to do time stop right here to skip having to watch this Skull Kid cutscene. And I'm doing a variation known as bomb time stop, where basically I'm trying to shield while I'm playing the ocarina, so that I can get into this state where cutscenes can't trigger. And so then I can just walk through the cutscene trigger to the Southern Swamp. So I'm using this home buffering technique here to buffer to specific frames of the explosion animation over Link's head. And I did finally get it this third time, which is good. So this saves about a minute and a half to 2 minutes if you get it fast in first try. Right here I put on the Deku Mask to try and do some faster movement here in the swamp with a trick known as a Deku Flower Slide. Unfortunately, I failed because I missed timing the Deku Flower Slide off of the Chew. So I just resorted to back walking. Again, this run is not like a completely optimal showing. It's more of just like, here is what the route is. And like, this is good enough for my standards at the time. And I'm not sure I really want to try and go back and improve this. Mostly because, like, you know, the beginning of this game, grinding it over and over again ends up becoming a bit of a snooze fest, so it's not something I want to do. Alright, so here we got a Deku Stick, and then once again I'm going to shield while spinning through to not trigger the cutscene of learning the Song of Soaring, because we don't need the Song of Soaring. And then here we're going to mash the B button as I climb up this ladder to climb it faster. I'm going to use a long jump to get past this big octo here, so that I can get to this part of the Southern Swamp and get to the Deku Palace faster. And we get shot out by the big octo on the other side. And so now I'm going to use Deku Link to hop my way to the other side of the palace. Now, for the SRM setup that we're going to do here, we specifically need it to be 6 p.m. because we specifically want it to be 5 p.m. right now, because we're going to achieve SRM with a night transition inside the Deku Palace. So the only time we can get that now is on, you know, the night of, or the closest time that we have to get to that is night of the first day. So because I took 2.5 hearts of damage back there, I'm actually going to die in the swamp right now. So that I don't have to die later, right before the Majora fight, if I want full health right before it, because the Majora fight is a little bit crazy with the limited inventory that we have here. So the setup for this SRM requires us to save the game and then quit out, because we need to manipulate this game's heap in a very specific way. And the heap is basically just like the memory that the game uses to load in all the objects that it needs. And the heap manipulation is already starting, right? We specifically need to wait on the title screen here, because the things we do even now are going to affect the heap as it happens in-game, because the heap in this game is like, it basically takes everything that's happening into account, right? Like, it's more complicated than the heap in the original Majora's Mask, so we can't just, like, you know, copy what the original game does to do SRM. Not that even if the heap worked the same way, we'd be able to, but just to sort of demonstrate the complexity of the heap. So I waited until the first Clock Town scene there on the title screen before I actually entered the game. And then here I'm going to be doing a triple slash clip to get past these Deku guards. And I will be standing in a very specific spot right here to perform the SRM. Right here is a spot where I can release a Chew down on the ground and have it go in like a circle around the upper ramp to come back to me. And this is where our pause buffering party is going to begin. I need to pause buffer to, I believe it's 11 frames after the change on the clock to 5:51 p.m. here. And I'm going to use a shielding animation to help me do that because it's a lot easier to time that way. I'm going to then shield a Bombchu after this frame right here and let it begin running around. And I basically want to pick up this bomb that I'm putting down right now right at 6 o'clock as the transition is happening from daytime to nighttime. And it needs to be frame perfect because if it's not frame perfect, then Link's basically going to lose the stale reference that he's picking up right here. So Link picked up the reference to where that bomb was in memory, and by moving over to this area of the Deku Palace, that area of memory is now being taken up by one of the Deku guards in the back area. And so I'm going to be waiting until a very specific frame to shield drop this reference that I have over Link's head, which is going to manipulate data related to the Deku Guard. And specifically, it's going to manipulate the entrance to which the Deku Guard is supposed to send us when he catches us. And this has to be done on a very specific frame due to the fact that Link's breathing animation is actually changing the position of the reference that he's holding over his head. So I'm buffering... Yeah, okay, so we shield on that frame. And then I have to be sure not to get caught by any of the other Deku guards right now. Because if I get caught by any of the other ones, except the specific one, the trick is basically going to fail. So we're going to roll over here. This Deku guard's kind of running in a weird direction, which is one of the side effects of doing the trick. But we did get to him in time before he ran out of bounds. And so we successfully managed to warp all the way to the moon, skipping all 4 dungeons, all the items that we would need in those dungeons, the 4 remains, the Oath to Order. None of that stuff is necessary anymore. So this is specifically the goat trial that we wrong warped into, and we can just take the exit out. And now we're up here on our Windows XP home screen. You guys enjoyed that. So right here, I did mean to try and talk to Majora as fast as possible, but somehow I ended up targeting the save statue, which was not intended, but I guess we got an extra save in. Alright, but now we're into the real craziness of the run, which is the Majora fight. So the Majora fight, if you actually have all of the, items and weapons that you would normally have from beating the 4 dungeons, is pretty manageable. It can be a little chaotic, but it's not too bad if you have, say, Zora Mask and the bow and light arrows and stuff. But here, we are equipped with 1 Deku Stick and a bunch of explosives, so that's what we're gonna have to use to take down Majora. For the first phase of the mask right here, I'm going to get over into this corner, and then I'm going to wait until the mask starts attempting to do like a spin attack at me, and then I'm going to place down a bomb, stun it with a quick spin, and then have the bomb deal damage to it. And then I'm going to repeatedly backflip a Bombchu to re-stun it, and then I can get the jump slash in here before the remains wake up. I'm going to do the next 2 cycles of the fight again with stunning with the Bombchu, except this time I'm going to use my Deku Stick to attack the mask. And I'm going to use this glitch where if you pull out a Deku Stick and then pull out the ocarina and put the ocarina away, Link will still be holding the Deku Stick, but it'll be invisible and it won't break. So that essentially allows us to use the Deku Stick infinitely. Which is also going to come into play here. Of course, you do have to take out the ocarina every time you want to do this, which is a bit slow, but still, infinite Deku Sticks. It's very good. Alright, so the incarnation kind of just runs around like crazy. Thankfully, at the beginning of this part here, it kind of ran towards me, so I was able to get in a side hop with a Bombchu explosion to stun it. And then I'm basically going to rinse and repeat after doing 1 quick spin attack here to get the Wrath, or not the Wrath, the Incarnation near the edge of the arena. I specifically want Incarnation near the edge because I want to be facing away from the remains. The remains in this fight will attack you, but only if you're facing them, which is why we're not facing them so they don't attack us, because the remain attacks can be extremely annoying for the first 2 phases of the fight. I believe this takes 7 or 8 Deku Stick jump slashes. That time I ended up just re-stunning the Incarnation as it tried to get up again. And another backflip bombchu. More pulling out the ocarina. I believe one more right here. There we go. Alright, and now it is time for Wrath. So, Wrath is definitely the hardest one out of the three phases, I'd say, for this, because Wrath likes to jump around a lot and will try to attack you if you get too close. I try to once again use bombchus, except this time the general strategy is to shield down a bombchu and then make it explode right in front of the Wrath's legs. Just like that to stun it. And then I'm going to attempt to use the invisible Deku Stick again to repeatedly do 20 crouch stab attacks on Majora. But unfortunately I was a little early on one of those attacks, so it didn't quite work. And thankfully I have enough health to survive these attacks that I'm being given, as well as a shield to shield the Remain's attacks. But the Remains are actually kind of interesting here, because on only the Wrath phase of the fight, the Remain's attacks can actually damage Wrath if the Remain energy balls make contact with Wrath, and stun Wrath if they happen to be in the way. So that's actually going to be how this fight finishes. I also just got trolled by the camera right there. So now Majora's into the corner. Just keeps on jumping around a lot. So you'll notice that for this part of the fight, I'm actually going to, after I stun Wrath here once more, or after the Remains stun Wrath, I should say. I tried using the invisible Deku Stick, but one of the Remains actually did damage to Majora for me. And then the last Remain attack just comes in right there to finish off Majora. Because each of the Remain energy balls actually does 16 damage to Majora's Wrath. And again, that's specifically only for the Wrath phase. Which, to give a comparison, a Jump Slash with the Great Fairy Sword does 8 damage. So the Remains doing 16 damage per hit is, like, absolutely insane. And I'm not actually sure if that was intentional or not, but it's something we can use to our advantage here in the Majora fight. So that's how that craziness decided to end in this run. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that showcase of my PB with the commentary that I was able to put over it. It's pretty crazy how much work went into making the moon warp for this route work the way that it does. There were certain community members like Mr. Cheese and Gabby who were, trying to crack that puzzle for months before it was finally able to be successfully executed and figured out. So big shoutouts to them for getting it to work and for finding the holy grail for another 3D Zelda game. But yeah, I believe that's it from me, so thank you guys very much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. Again, I'm probably not going to be improving this PB much anytime soon. Iwabi already has done a great job with the current world record, so if you want to watch an optimal run, I would highly recommend going to watch that one. But this is just me documenting my PB for the time being. And if, first cycle skip ever becomes faster, that's probably going to make the run very interesting, because first cycle skip in its current form is actually very complex, as I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and hope to see you guys on stream or in future videos. Goodbye.